Hello and welcome to Crosstalk. I'm Peter Lavelle. In auspicious beginnings, Libya's National Transitional Council has announced the country's liberation from the Gaddafi dictatorship. What kind of country Libya will now become is anything but clear. Will it be ruled under Islamic law, and will the rule of law prevail in the wake of Gaddafi's killing? And is national unity an illusion with so many factions vying for power? Crosstalk Libya's future, I'm joined by Daniel Serwer in Washington. He's a professorial lecturer at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. Also in Washington, we have Paul Coring. He is a foreign correspondent for the Globe and Mail. And in New York, we go to Ted Rao. He is a journalist, political cartoonist, and author of The Anti-American Manifesto. All right, gentlemen, this is Crosstalk. That means you can jump in anytime you want, and I very much encourage it. But first, Masha, what are Libya's prospects moving forward?
Well, as you mentioned in the beginning, the road ahead of Libya is anything but clear. And I dare say it is all because of duplicity. Duplicity which has accompanied the death of Muammar Gaddafi, as well as the entire Libyan campaign. As the media continues to chew over the ghoulish details of the deposed leader's death, we're taking back through the history of Libya's ties with the West, which reveal that democracy and humanitarianism were rarely on the agenda. From a time when Gaddafi was branded the mad dog of the Middle East to a period when his relations with the West warmed and all of the alleged sins were absolved by pricey defense and oil deals, this is what Senator McCain had to say about Libya only 2 years ago.
Ties between the United States and Libya have taken a remarkable and positive turn in recent years.
And not long after Libya had established partnerships with a whole slew of Western leaders, the Libyans rose in defiance of Gaddafi's rule, and the West flashed the responsibility to protect card and launched a NATO mission in support of the uprising. 7 months later, the mission is complete, the manhunt for Gaddafi drawn to a close by these very rebels that the West has helped to arm.
We came, we saw, he died.
Now, there's much talk about the future that faces Libya, whether it'll be able to preserve its domestic unity, elect a government that can show itself to be different from the barbarity which has marked the rebels' recent actions, and finally, avoid being doled out to foreign stakeholders.
There are very many competing elements within the TNC and differing political philosophies. I hope those are played out in a democratic way. Otherwise, the alternative is some ghastly descent into war.
Many say it was the hate for Gaddafi which coalesced Libya's fractious forces. Perhaps it is for the fear of seeing them rip the country apart that the NTC chair Mustafa Abdul Jalil promised on Sunday to unite Libya under the law of Sharia. And we'll just have to see how conducive that plan is to democracy.
Well, let's talk about democracy. First, I'd like to go to Ted. Ted, what kind of democracy can you possibly make in a Libya that has just suffered a civil war like this and hardly has any state institutions whatsoever?
Well, obviously, anybody who claims to be able to predict the future of this new regime, it would just be telling lies and making up stories. But that said, this is going to be a formidable challenge. We're not even really sure if democracy is what the TNC has in mind now that they've taken power. And certainly their pre-Gaddafi origins suggest that that's not necessarily in the cards. Certainly, even if they do, they are serious about forming a coalition of all the various factions and tribes and political factions that predated and existed during the 42-year reign of Muammar Gaddafi. There's no telling where this is going to go. It is just so hard to cobble together such a vast country, and I think a lot of people are unaware of exactly how big Libya is and how fractured it is. It's not going to be an exact parallel to Iraq, but I think we can see certain parallels.
Okay, Paul, how does a country like Libya that really doesn't even have really many state functions? I mean, it was all based on one man and his family for 42 years. I mean, don't they have to work on state building before they start building democracy? Or can you build a democracy without a state?
Yeah, no, I don't think you can, and I think perhaps there's a tendency of the media and outside observers to kind of see democracy as something that gets installed or built almost overnight. you know, societies in transition, even in the 21st century, that's a slow, difficult, arduous process. And at this stage, Libya needs sort of civil society, peace, the beginnings of economic renaissance. Democracy may be a peace, and it may be a slowly growing peace that starts early, but there's no likelihood of an immediate democracy any more than there's a likelihood of an immediately functioning economy. This is going to take a long time. Progress is going to be slow. It will be fitful. There will be setbacks. The nightmare scenarios exist as well.
Okay, well, that doesn't sound very optimistic. Daniel, if I can go to you, what do you think about building a democratic state with respecting the rights of all with this alleged, that looks very clear from the video that's been put on YouTube and elsewhere, of the murder of Gaddafi? I mean, is the National Transition Council getting off to a good footing there?
I'm much more hopeful than my colleagues are. I've been in Libya. I've talked with the Libyans. They're not going to accept another dictator. I don't think there's any reason why they should accept another dictator. It is a long, hard, arduous road to democracy, but they've laid out a roadmap in their constitutional framework document. It's much clearer than what had been laid out in Tunisia, which just successfully held its first elections. It's much clearer than what has been laid out in Egypt. The current leadership has made it clear that it will not run for future office. And frankly, Libya has vast resources, not only the oil and gas in the ground, but the money in Western banks. Gaddafi is going to finance the next regime in Libya. So there are no guarantees here. Let me be clear. This is a long and arduous road. But I think there's a good chance that Libya can go down that road. It should do it carefully. It should do it slowly. It shouldn't rush anything. But, you know, the killing of Gaddafi from Western eyes was extremely brutal and murderous and
illegal as well, probably under international law. If I can go, you want to jump in there, Paul? Paul, you want to jump in?
Illegal as well.
You know, I don't think that you can. I don't think you can hold the Transitional Council responsible for what was brutal murder and may in fact be a war crime. But I mean, let's be clear here. This is the end of a conflict, and it's pretty clear that that lots of the fighting factions were only barely within a chain of command. So I mean, I think to focus on without defending what seems to be a murder and a war crime, but to somehow taint the entire transitional effort with that. It's unfortunate, it's terrible, like the murder of Ceausescu,
also, it's probably quite convenient, isn't it? If I go to you, Ted, I mean, I guess we won't hear a lot about Lockerbie, we won't hear a lot about rendition, and we won't hear about other things that the Bush administration and Obama administration had to do with the war on terror, with the passage of Gaddafi.
Well, I think that's apples and oranges. I mean, if you're
asking
whether this is going to be a difficult...
Let's not forget the role of the United States in what essentially was the murder of Gaddafi. After all, this was an American drone plane that attacked his convoy alongside a French warplane, and these two. So really, this was a joint French, NATO, U.S. murder of Gaddafi. The fact that he was technically alive as he scrambled out of his convoy, hardly negates the role of the United States in his murder. He would not have been murdered had that airstrike not occurred. So this goes part and parcel to the assassination of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. The Obama administration's enemies have a way of just being disappeared and dumped into anonymous graves. And obviously, you can't help but ask yourself if there are not a bunch of inconvenient questions that would be asked at a war crimes trial at The Hague that perhaps the big powers would rather not see asked.
What do you think about that, Paul?
Well, you can pose
opportunity for a war crimes trial.
Okay, Paul first and then Daniel.
You can
Paul
pose
first
that
and then
sort of thing
Daniel.
rhetorically all you want. You can pose that sort of thing rhetorically all you want. You could say, you know, Gaddafi would still be in power if there hadn't been a United Nations Security Council mandate. I mean, but what you're trying to do, what you're trying to do is sully the entire process by stringing together a bunch of things and saying, you know, ergo, the Obama administration is somehow responsible for the deaths of all these people. And you can make that argument, but you're not going to find any support from me on it.
Daniel, you wanted to jump in there?
I mean, a drone plane is not a somehow.
Well, I think this argument about this calling of the killing of Gaddafi, the military action against his convoy as murder is just nonsense. It's not murder in anybody's terms. I'd be glad to see. But
drones are designed to kill people. Drones are designed to kill people.
Assassination. There was no declared war against Libya.
They are designed to kill people, and they are military.
The United States was not at war with Libya.
Daniel?
It was an assassination attempt against a foreign leader who could have been captured alive.
Do you want to respond to that, Daniel?
I'll beg to differ on that subject. I just don't think there's any sign that there's a war crime involved here. I don't think it's murder. I think it's part of an ugly process that we call war. The murder was in the ambulance, so far as I can tell, by a young Libyan. And you know, maybe he should be held responsible for that. But I just don't think that the attack on the convoy
always
is
go
in
after
any
the small
sense
fish, never the
a
big
war
fish.
crime, and I don't believe anybody will ever prosecute it that way.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to go to a short break, and after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on Libya. Stay with RT.
Orang Jepang,
Brasil,
Australia juga,
Italiano,
New Zealand,
Norway,
Prancis,
Sweden,
Jerman, Swiss, yeah.
If you want to have sex, go and have sex.
Wealthy